Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 and AM 630. WMAL.
Good morning again, 8:37 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Joining us on the line right now is Ben Shapiro, who is the editor of TruthRevolt.org. But for purpose of our discussion, he's also the author of a new book called The People versus Barack Obama, The Criminal Case Against the Obama Administration. He's one of the brightest young men that I've ever met, and I'm always a pleasure to talk to Ben Shapiro. How are you, Ben?
Hey, doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Okay, so look, I want to start out, and we'll talk about your book, but I want to sort of frame it in looking at this IRS scandal. Because, you know, what we're really looking at here with the IRS scandal is a conversation about whether or not the IRS was wielded as a political weapon by the Obama administration. At its core, that is what we are trying to find out. As you look at all of the facts as we know them, and many of the facts that we do not yet know because emails are missing, what's your take on that?
Without a doubt, it was wielded by the administration. And this kind of stuff, it is amazing how the IRS's attempt to crack down on conservative groups matches up just ever so perfectly with exactly what the Obama administration wanted it to do. I mean, let's not forget that President Obama, for years, after Citizens United, was saying, wouldn't it be great if somebody cracked down on these conservative nonprofit groups? Senators from the Democratic Party were sending letters to the IRS telling them, you guys really should take a look at these conservative nonprofit groups. And lo and behold, the IRS takes a look at these conservative nonprofit groups, cracks down on them, and President Obama throws up his hands and says, oh, this is terrible. I can't believe this. Well, what a terrible scandal. And 6 weeks later, he's saying the scandal's phony. All of this does not wash. And it certainly does not wash when they say that emails magically disappeared. I mean, I have yet to see an email that I've ever received or that anybody I know has ever received that has on the bottom the Mission Impossible warning, this message self-destructs in 5 seconds. That's not the way email works. And for them to claim that all of this just went away is not only highly suspicious, it's beyond belief. Whenever there's a scandal in this administration, ask yourself this. If all of this is just coincidence, if all of this just magically happens and Obama has nothing to do with it and the White House has nothing to do with it, why is it that every scandal that happens serves the president's interest? Why is it that when the IRS decided to target people, it didn't decide to target progressive nonprofits, right? It just went after conservative nonprofits. This is the way the executive branch now works. The executive branch can do whatever the hell it wants, and the executive branch will move to target people, and there is no accountability because there are layers of plausible deniability throughout the administration. When you have 2 million people working for an executive branch, and you have the president sitting atop that executive branch, he never has to issue a direct order. It's Henry II versus Thomas II. All he has to do is say, well, no one rid me of this troublesome priest, and somebody rids him of the troublesome priest, and then he says, oh, well, I guess that wasn't me. It's crazy how that stuff happens, isn't it?
Ben Shapiro going Beckett on you there, bringing a little Peter O'Toole to the table. His book, The People versus Barack Obama, The Criminal Case Against the Obama Administration, is out and available now. And all right, Ben Shapiro, you make the case. The problem is, who's going to actually take up that case? I mean, is there any will in the U.S. Congress to actually do anything about Barack Obama's lawlessness?
I don't think there's any will to do anything about it directly. I think that all this talk of impeachment is nonsense. Whenever people say impeachment, they forget that there have been 19 impeachments in the history of the United States, and there have only been 8 convictions in the Senate in order to remove somebody from office. So once every 30 years. And that as a tool, impeachment as a tool just is not sufficient to check the executive branch. It might have been at the beginning of the Republic. It certainly is not now. And we're not seeing, there are all these rumors out there, but nobody's going to do anything. And we all know that nobody's going to do anything. What I suggest in the book is something different. I suggest that what Congress should do is Congress should pass basically a one-paragraph addition to the Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations Act that would allow people to sue the Obama administration, to sue the executive branch, and to look to the judiciary to stop criminality within the executive branch.
Hold on, you're citing a RICO case here, which is used against Mafia organizations. Are you saying the Obama administration is basically like the mob?
Yes, that is the comparison. I mean, this is because the way that the Mafia works, this is what RICO was instituted for. The way that the Mafia works is that you have somebody at the top level who gives vague orders, and then down the chain, somebody picks up the order and goes and does something. This is the reason RICO was created in the first place, is specifically because of the problem of plausible deniability. Don Corleone never talks directly with Luca Brasi or gives him an order. He just says he says something at the top level, and it gets done at the bottom level, and there's never any chain. That was the whole purpose of RICO. It was to wrap up all of these activities in one ball of criminal enterprise. And that's exactly what the executive branch has become. It is a criminal enterprise. The safest place in the United States for any criminal is to be working inside the executive branch right now, because there is no prosecution. Nobody's been fired in any of these things. Nobody's been prosecuted. Nobody's gone to jail. Anybody who's been fired, when people say that Lois Lerner was fired, she wasn't fired. She resigned, and she ends up with her full benefits and package. So the idea that there's any accountability whatsoever is absurd. And, of course, there's also no question that all these folks are working together in tandem. The problem that you have is exactly what you're saying, Larry. You're never going to find the email, even if it once existed, which I doubt. You're never going to find the email directly from Barack Obama to Lois Lerner saying, "Hey, could you please take a look at the Tea Party Patriots?"
So, one of the things that I've heard some people suggest is that when the president sat down with Bill O'Reilly for that interview, and he said there's not even a smidgen of corruption, that was sort of what you're talking about. It was sort of like the unofficial word to everyone. Right? There's no corruption out there. They're not going to find anything, are they? Well, if you know of something, you might want to take care of it. I mean, sort of that's the unspoken part of that. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, if people did destroy evidence, then I don't think that you needed a clear indicator from the president for people to go ahead and destroy evidence. The president has made clear he's not going to prosecute anybody, and his attorney general, who is the lead criminal in this administration, Eric Holder, is certainly not going to prosecute anybody. I mean, you're asking the mafia to prosecute itself, and that's never going to happen. And the whole purpose of RICO in the first place, the reason that you have a civil side of RICO, right? You can sue the mafia. The reason that you can sue the mafia is because the legislators who passed that act feared that prosecutors and judges were being paid off by the mafia. And so they created RICO, and what they said is, you are now a private attorney general. We've deputized all of you to help control these mafia organizations. We need to do the same thing with the executive branch. Now, it's going to be a radical shift in power because it means that you could basically hamstring the executive branch, no matter who the executive is. And I know there are people on the right who fear that because they say, oh, well, what if it had been Cindy Sheehan and George W. Bush? At this point, I honestly don't care. And the reason I don't care is because what we are looking at is such an overreach of the executive branch as a general systemic matter that even if you like who the president is right now, you're not going to like who the president is tomorrow. And this is a very scary time that we're living in. We're living in a time where we are basically essentially an elected dictatorship. The president can do whatever the hell he wants. And I promise you that by the end of the year, we are going to be either lamenting or getting ready for the president of the United States to unilaterally amnesty 11 million people after he doesn't do well in the November elections. And nobody's going to stop him. He's just going to go ahead and do it. And then we're going to be wondering exactly what does the legislature in this country do? Because the president can do whatever it is that he wants to do, obviously.
Our guest is Ben Shapiro, and he is making the same case right now to you, WMAL, that he makes in his book, The People versus Barack Obama, the criminal case against the Obama administration. Real fast, Ben, I mean, obviously you know what you're talking about. You're a lawyer, a Harvard law grad, no less. Thank you very much. But isn't the real problem here that we don't have a political will in the Republican Party? If we had some good candidates, some good politicians who could articulate some messages and actually have the courage to go up against this president, we wouldn't need to have to throw him in jail. We could actually win politically.
I think that we've reached beyond the age over the last 100 years of politicians actually mattering. I mean, to a certain extent they do. Obviously, there's a difference between George W. Bush and
right.
Barack Obama. I'm not somebody who believes that both parties are the same. But when it comes to the system itself, the legislature has zero interest in going after the executive branch, ever, because the legislature understands
right.
that the easiest way to get reelected is to toss all responsibility to the executive branch. So there's this tacit deal. We will write you these vague laws. You will take your regulators. You will go implement those vague laws. We won't come after you. You basically leave us alone. We'll keep getting reelected. You keep getting reelected. You keep expanding, and everybody's happy.
So that's a systemic problem, but putting it in the hands of the people to be able to sue, that could actually break it off. Great. Excellent. Ben Shapiro, thanks a lot. Great book.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Ben, thanks much.